Okay, welcome to Fusion. The first thing I want to do is set a couple preferences for you guys to make this work a little better. For some reason, Fusion has mouse settings that I don't really like, and I want to remind you, please use a mouse. Come get one at school for me if you don't have one. You will have so much trouble doing this with your trackpad. So if you don't have a mouse, let me know, and I'll tell you how to come up and get one from school. Otherwise, dig one up from some drawer in your house. There must be an old mouse lying around somewhere, right? So we're going to change some preferences. If you go up here in the upper right corner to your name and click on it, it will open up a little menu, preferences. Okay. And then so yours out of the box probably says Fusion right here under Pan Zoom Orbit Shortcuts. I'd like you to change that to Tinkercad. I prefer the way they're set up actually, and you're used to those too on top of that, but I actually like them better. Don't know why they're different in Fusion. And then Fusion, oddly enough, also, if you scroll your middle mouse button towards you, it makes things bigger. And if you push your middle mouse button away from you, it makes things smaller, which is the opposite of most design software. So if you hate that it does that, check this box. So definitely check Tinkercad. Optional, you can see how the zoom works for you and come back if you'd like it the other way. It's an easy preference to change. The other thing is, for some reason, it likes Y up to be the default. And I don't understand that. To me, Z is up. X and Y are on the ground, and Z is up. It's basic geometry. So I don't know why Y up is the choice. So please click Z up, and then click Apply, and click OK. And you'll notice over here in your view cube for today, Y is still going to be up because you have to actually relaunch Fusion to make Z up. But for today, it doesn't matter. It'll just be easier if we all have the same setup. So when I tell you to use the YZ plane, you'll know what I'm talking about. So for today, you probably are looking at what I'm looking at here, XYZ, but in the future, it will go XZY instead. So just so you know. All right. So Fusion, everything you do is pretty much in these menus, and almost everything we do will be in the create and modify menus. These little guys up here are mostly for creating and saving files, which we'll talk about eventually. You might have your, this little waffle opened, or ice cube tray opens and closes the little pane that shows you what your files. So if you, I forget whether it starts out this way out of the box. If you are working and not needing to see your files, I would click on the waffle to close that, just to give you as much screen real estate as possible, just to make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. This is undo and redo, which is Control Z and Control Y. And like always, I say you will wear out your Control Z key. Probably won't come up here to use a button to do it. Okay, so the way Fusion works is it works like a real engineer, where they draw engineering drawings first, and then they expand those into three-dimensional objects. So we are almost always going to start out by sketching, which is under this Create menu. And if you look, there's a few buttons up here with some commonly used things, and you can change the ribbon to have different buttons. But everything you could possibly do under the Create menu is here. And one of the things here is also Create Sketch. Once you've created this sketch, then you can extrude, revolve, sweep, loft, rib in order to turn it into a three-dimensional object. This other stuff comes up here and there. These are little shortcuts that I wouldn't worry about because I think they're just kind of dumb. So, and I don't really see the use to them. So for almost all purposes, the first thing you're going to do anytime you're starting a design is sketch it out. So either just click on this button or click on the Create menu and choose Create Sketch. And so this is where Fusion is slightly confusing to a new person, because it won't let you draw yet. You'll notice what your mouse does is your mouse takes each of these three yellow squares and turns it light gray blue, because the first thing Fusion needs to know is what plane you want to draw on. And I will show you why that matters. It would just be a waste of time to explain it. I'll show it to you in a few minutes. But for now, we want to work on the ground plane. So please click on the ground plane. If you click on this by mistake, just undo, and it will take you back to the beginning, and click sketch again, and then click on the ground plane. Okay, again, if you clicked on the wrong plane, just click undo, click on sketch, and click on the ground plane this time. And you'll notice what it does is it changes the software. So it's one of the reasons they call this Fusion, is because it's kind of a fusion of different apps. Now the software has become an engineer's drawing program. So you're looking straight down, because when you draw, you look straight down at things. You don't look at them from a three-dimensional perspective. And you'll notice the buttons up here have changed to a few commonly used shapes that you might draw. And the Create menu has changed into a drawing application. A bunch of different ways to draw rectangles, a bunch of different ways to draw circles, arcs, polygons, and we'll go through most, if not all of these as time goes by. But we want to just draw a rectangle, and the most common rectangle is a 2-point rectangle. So you can either choose that from here, type in R, because it's such a common thing, they give you a keyboard shortcut, or click on the 2-point rectangle button up here. And I hope your ribbons look exactly like mine. If they don't worry about it. Everything's under the Create menu anyway. Okay, so click on that, and then you're going to start drawing. Fusion is set up for engineers to work really efficiently for an engineer. And unfortunately, that means for beginners, it's not set up for you at all the way Tinkercad is. It's set up to be really efficient for engineers. So sometimes it's a little confusing, like the ground plane, the choosing planes, which I'll show you why that's so powerful later. Even when you're drawing a rectangle, there's one confusing thing about drawing a rectangle. Once you've found that origin, if you click and hold your left mouse button down while you drag, it's completely different than if you click and let go of your mouse button and drag. So first, I'm going to click and let go of my mouse button and drag. So I'm not holding my mouse button down, if you can see in my little square. And then I'm just going to click to say I'm done drawing my rectangle. Okay, so what it does now is it's drawn a rectangle to those dimensions, but I can't change that rectangle easily. And it's actually considered to be unconstrained, undefined. So it's this light blue, and it's just a bad thing. So I don't know, this is like for freehand sketching is the idea, but I'm never going to ask you to do that. So you will never do that. So when you are drawing your rectangle, and anything you draw, you need to hold your mouse button down while you draw, or it won't act the way I'm telling you it should act, and you'll be really frustrated. Okay, so I'm going to find the origin, I'm going to click, I'm going to hold my mouse button down, and I'm going to drag. And what I'm going to do is, I want to make this 100 by 100, but it doesn't matter how big I make it now. Just like when you were resizing in Tinkercad, you weren't using the squares to drag the size, you were typing in parameters. So same here, I'm just going to drag a quick rectangle from lower left to upper right, and just then just let go. Okay, doesn't matter. Now I'm going to let go of my mouse once I've started to form that shape. And don't worry if it looks exactly like mine, just make sure you've got a rectangle drawn. So again, all I did was click and hold down my mouse button and drag until I see a rectangle. And then what I'm going to do, and you might have the x-axis highlighted instead of my y, but what you want to do is whichever one's highlighted, just type in 100 and then hit tab. Don't hit enter yet. Hit tab to get you to the other one. If you try to move your mouse to the other one, it's going to freak out the rectangle. So hit tab and type in 100. And this might take you a little practice. Just practice until you get it right. Then once you know your dimensions are right, hit enter. Okay? So now you have this nice bright blue rectangle or light blue rectangle that has dark lines around it, which lets you to know it's fully defined, which you don't have to worry about. But what is really great now is you could just change your mind. So whereas on that first one where I was freehand sketching, I couldn't change my dimensions. Here, if you made a mistake and you didn't type in 100, 100, but you did hold your mouse button down while you were dragging the initial rectangle, you can just double click on either of these dimensions and type in a different dimension. Okay? But please leave it 100 by 100 for now. And you might be zoomed in differently than I am, which I'm about to show you. Oops. You can double click on these, change their dimension, hit enter. Don't just click on the next one. Double click on it, hit enter, and get it to where it's supposed to be. All right. So now this brings us to navigation. Navigation's a little different in sketching than in 3 dimensions because we're never having to orbit when we sketch. All we're doing is probably panning and zooming in and out. So you'll notice one really powerful thing in Fusion when you zoom in and out is it zooms to your cursor. So if my mouse is over here, it's going to zoom in right to there. And it's going crazy. So I'm going to zoom back out again. If my mouse is right here over this, though, it will zoom right into it. Okay? So this is a way to kind of pan and zoom at the same time. And you'll get used to it over time, and it really does become a nice, powerful thing. At first, it might be frustrating. The other thing you can do is pan. And pan is a little hand down here. So just click on the little hand tool, and then you can move around like that instead. You can still zoom in and out. Just remember you're in pan mode now, so if you use the mouse, you'll be panning in and out. There's also a couple nice little guys here. If you look, this menu says zoom window or zoom fit, and zoom fit is also F6, which might work on your keyboard, I'm not sure. But if you choose zoom fit, it will actually zoom to fit just like in Tinkercad and zoom you right into whatever is the selected object that you're working on. Okay, so that's some quick navigation tools. Like I said, in through the 3-dimensional navigation, it gets much more complicated, but we will, I'll show you how to do that later. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you is now, the next thing I want to show you now is how to turn the sketch into a 3-dimensional object. So everybody should have 100 millimeter square. So in order to tell it you want to go back into the other app, you need to actually tell it you want to go back into the other app by clicking Finish Sketch, which should be highlighted up here in your menu. So click Finish Sketch, and it will take you into the other menu. By the way, a really nice thing in Fusion, which I'll go to over and over again, is your timeline. So Fusion will keep track, and to see this, if you're not, if your window isn't maximized, this might not be showing. So make sure your window is maximized so you can see this bottom bar because it's really important. This keeps track of everything you've done, and you can always go back to your work to fix it. So if you wanted to change this sketch, the easiest way to do it would be to double click on this little icon here for that sketch and change it, and then click Finish Sketch. Or you can right click on this icon and say Edit Sketch, either way, and it will take you back to the sketch. Okay. So even if you've clicked Finish Sketch by mistake, don't freak out. You can always get back to it by double clicking on the edits on the timeline. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to turn this into a 3-dimensional object. So what we want to do is we want to under Modify, we're going to choose Press Pull, and that's here. And you'll also notice it's Q. You'll be doing this all the time, so you're probably going to want to learn that Q is the keyboard command for this. So I'm going to choose Press Pull. And you'll notice it's still in that. For some reason, when you finish Sketch, it doesn't go to the 3-dimensional view always. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So the first thing we want to do is we can't push pull out of the screen. So we want to go back to the 3-dimensional view. And Fusion is a little different with the view cube up here. You could do this by actually manipulating the view cube, but it's a little hard to do that, I think. The difference in Fusion is the little home button here, which is so important, for some reason doesn't show up unless your mouse is up by the view cube. So get your mouse up by the view cube and click the home button. And now you're looking at this as a 3-dimensional object, and it'll be easier to push pull. And in fact, I'm going to just zoom out a little bit so it's a little smaller too. Okay, you don't have to. But definitely get to home. So you're looking at this three-dimensionally. You can't push-pull two-dimensionally. And like I said, sometimes it actually automatically does this, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why. So these dialog boxes are the key to everything in Fusion. Anytime you choose a command that brings up one of these, this is where you are going to control what we call the workflow. So in Fusion, workflow is everything. If you don't flow the way they want you to flow, you will drown. Because like I said, it is streamlined for engineers. So what you can notice here is it's telling you it wants you to select something. Yes, we only have one thing on our screen, but you might have 10 things on your screen. It needs to know what you want to press pull. So when you mouse over anything on your screen, whatever you're moused over will turn dark blue. Click on what you want to press pull, and then it will change that box to what's called extruding, which is making things larger. So you can extrude by just pulling the arrow up, but like usual, you're probably not going to use arrows or squares to move things. You're just going to type in the amounts I want you to type in. So I want you to make this 10 millimeters high. So click in 10, and then there's a bunch of different choices here, which we'll go over when we're doing more complicated stuff. But for now, all you need to do is either pull up the arrow 10 or choose 10. This guy will do some cool stuff, but I never use it, so don't worry about the little protractor thing here. Just grab the mouse and pull it up, or what I would say in general is just type in 10 and click OK. And I'll do that again just so you know what to do. So I am going to choose create, and then I'm going to choose modify because I'm modifying my sketch. I'm going to choose press pull or Q. I'm going to follow the directions and select what I want to select. And then I'm going to pull this up until it's 10 millimeters high. Okay, and you've got your first solid object. Okay, so now that we have your solid object, there's just a little bit more navigation to learn here. So again, if you scroll in or out, it will scroll up, your wheel, your mouse wheel, it will go in or out, and that really depends on where your mouse is. So you can kind of pan while you scroll. You can also grab the little hand and pan that way to make things easier. The home button will always take you back home. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So if you hold your right mouse button down, just like in Tinkercad, you can orbit, which is a really important skill you probably learned in Tinkercad, is kind of a key thing. Remember, there is that zoom to fit as well, and the zoom window I'll show you eventually. Okay, so you've got your object. The next thing we need to do is need to know how to move things. So in Tinkercad, if I wanted to move this, I would have just clicked on it and dragged. It doesn't work that way in Fusion. You need to tell it you want to move. So in order to move, that is something you would do when you're modifying. So you'll notice there's a move copy command under modify, and you'll see how move can also copy. It's pretty similar to, I forget whether that happens in Tinkercad. M is the shortcut key because you do it so often. So you will want to remember that M is the shortcut key. So either choose this or grab M and then just click on the box. It needs you to select it. And up here, you'll notice that there's actually a bunch of choices. You can move bodies, faces, or sketch objects. Leave that bodies for now. I'll explain the other parts in a second. And then this is a somewhat complicated looking control, but there's really it's not that complicated. Remember, you can move in the X or the Y or the Z plane. So each of these arrows let you choose which one you want to move in. So if you grab this arrow, you can move directly in that plane. And as always, normally I would say move it 20 millimeters, and in the whichever plane that is, the X plane, or move. And I've relaunched, so my Z is up now. Yours might not be. Don't worry about that. Move up this arrow, right? And maybe I want you to move that 10, or move this arrow, right? So those are the different things you might move it. And then these little guys will let you rotate. So this is your rotation tool. Again, you would normally be typing those in. You can rotate in all 3 planes with those. And then these guys are free. I'm not really sure what the difference between the different squares is, but they let you move freely, not just lock to an X or a Y or a Z. Okay? So go ahead and I'm going to cancel that. So please cancel that. And if you hit OK, just undo and get yourself back to where your square is on the origin, preferably. And then I'll just show you. Sometimes you just want to move a face, which is really more or less the same as extruding. So if I choose a face and then I type M, notice it automatically defaults to face. So I can move this face up and down. I can't move this face from side to side. It's locked to these other parts. And then I'll explain all these other things to you eventually. If I now change to bodies, it will actually let me select the whole object and move it, okay? So normally when you're moving, if you want to move a whole object like this, you don't select part of it first or you're going to confuse Fusion because it thinks you know what you're doing and you just want to move a face. So just leave the thing unselected, type in M, and then select the thing you want to move, and then type in what you want to move. Grab an arrow and type in. You can actually also type in all of those parameters directly into the box. And then I wanted to also show you how you can make a copy. So if you check this box before you move, when you move, it will just automatically create a copy for you. Okay, and I'm going to undo that. I'm going to show you, this is one of my pet peeves in Fusion. If I type in M, and then I select this and I start to move it, it can't copy anymore. So if you move, you can't copy. So you have to copy right away. If you do anything to this, click on it and move it even a pixel, you'll lose this and you'll wonder, why can't I copy? Why can't I copy? So remember that when you want to copy, you select the object and you immediately have to check this box. If you start moving things around by mistake, you're going to have to cancel out and start it all over again. It's a pet peeve. I don't really know why it works that way, but that is the way it works. Okay, so we're just cancel out, undo, get back to where you just have a square. And we'll, as always, it's just a walkthrough. We'll use these tools over and over again in real projects where we're making real things. Okay, welcome back. Before we move on, I want to make sure everybody's with me. So if you look in your timeline, you should only see that original sketch and the extrude. If you have a lot of different stuff, again, workflow is everything in Fusion. So things are going to be unpredictable and you'll, like I said, you will drown. So you could, if you have a bunch of other stuff, you could try, if you right click on things, you can, here, I'll just create a bogus sketch and do something weird and just create a sketch and finish sketch. And now I've got this weird other thing, right? So if I have this weird other thing, I could delete it by right clicking and deleting. So you should just have the extrusion and the box. And if you don't, just X out of this, just get X out of this file and create a new file, which you can do with the little plus sign, or under here, create a new file, and just draw a 100 millimeter square like I explained earlier and extrude it 10 millimeters and just do those two things because you might have spazzed in between. And if you did, it's going to mess up what you're doing next. So please make sure you're right with me where you're supposed to be so that because if you're not in the same workflow, it will act unpredictably. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is I want to build a cylinder on top of this box, almost like it's a little joystick or something like that. So to do that, I'm going to sketch once again. So I'm going to click on Create Sketch. And this time, instead of choosing one of the work planes, and I'll explain the X and Y work plane to you eventually, but instead of choosing one of those, I want the cylinder to grow right out of the top of the box. And one really nice thing Fusion does is it lets you select one of the work planes, which are these 3, the built-in work planes, but it will also let you draw on any existing face on your project. So these are called, the sides of things are called faces. By the way, these are called edges. And then the whole thing is called a body. So I'm going to use that So the solid object is a body, this is a face, this is an edge, right? So if you want to draw on a face, you can choose any face you want and draw directly on it, and then you don't have to move things around so much. So since I want the cylinder growing out of this face, I'm going to click on this face to tell it that's where I want to draw, right? Instead of drawing on the ground plane or one of the built-in vertical work planes, okay? So now I need to tell it what I want to draw. And you'll notice that there are a bunch of different circles to make a cylinder out of. These, you'll see eventually why you might use these in other little tutorials, but mostly you're going to be drawing a center diameter circle like you would with a compass. And C is the keyboard command of that. So if you just type in C, it will turn you into a center drawing machine. One thing I want you to notice as you're moving your mouse around trying to find the center where you're going to put this circle, just notice when you're on an edge, the little black T cross turns into a little blue X with a square around it. And when you're in the middle of an edge, it actually gets a little triangle to let you know you're in the middle of the edge. Just a kind of fun thing you'll need from time to time. So I'm going to move down here to the center. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag, like always, with my mouse button held down. And then I can just let go of my mouse button. And I want this to be 30 millimeters. And again, this is the hardest thing people have, I think, with beginners. They want to use their mouse to make it exactly 30 millimeters and they spaz. So don't use your mouse to make it 30 millimeters. Just start the circle. Doesn't matter how big it is. Just get the circle started and then type in 30 and then click enter and it will create a circle. Okay? Just took a little time to process. And by the way, sometimes your computer is going to be slow. So sometimes just wait for it, like I had to wait for it there if it's acting unpredictably. Okay, so now if you did this right, you should, if you got rid of any extra little weird stuff and you chose the top surface of the square to draw on and not one of the little yellow squares, work plane squares, you should see two different parts. There should be a blue circle here and a blue square and a gray circle here. If not, undo and try it again. And this is where, you know, sometimes beginners need help right at the beginning. So just reach out to me for help. And I'll get you past the first stumbling blocks that happen very early on in Fusion. Okay, so now, as always, it's sort of assuming I might be doing a bunch of different sketches. So because usually when you're sketching, you do a bunch of different drawing at the same time. So it just is waiting for me to make more shapes, but I don't need to make more shapes. I just want to make the cylinder and be done with this project. So click Finish Sketch to let it know you want to do something else other than draw. And now we're back in what they call the modeling mode, where we're able to do three-dimensional work. So again, you should see a blue circle separate from this. If it's not part of this, you did something wrong. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to press pull, which is Q, to pull up our cylinder. And you'll see something kind of cool about Fusion, which is how easy it is to make a hole. So I'm going to, so as always, the dialog box is my friend. Make sure you always view these when you're going through the steps. It's waiting for me to select something. I want to pull this up, so I'm going to click on it. Okay. If I, what I said was, so right now it's ready to make, if I pull it up, it'll make a new cylinder that it'll join to the cube. So if I pull it up 10 millimeters, that's what I want to end up doing. But if I type in -5 or pull the arrow down 5, that is how Fusion makes holes. Much easier than in Tinkercad. And notice the minute I type in a negative number or pull the arrow down in a negative way, it changes to cut. Okay? If I go up, it joins. If I go down, negative, it cuts. So it's that simple. If I want to make something new, I pull up. If I want to make something cut into something, I just cut right into it. And you'll do this thousands of times in the next month or two. So don't worry, you'll catch on eventually if you're having a little trouble catching on now. Okay, so I'm going to pull up, click OK. And let's just say I'm done with this because I'm going to take you on to a more complicated version. I'm going to X this guy out. And that will get rid of it. And I don't want you to bother saving this. So just say don't save. And you'll notice that Fusion automatically makes you a new file called untitled. So it will always create you a brand new file called untitled when you X out.